First up is the Pledge of Allegiance, and the flag is right behind me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The meeting is being recorded by Norton Media. If anyone else is recording, please just let us know. It is our first time in the new town hall, so kind of bear with us a little bit with technology and whatnot, but we will kind of get started. First up is our new public comment period. So a few weeks back, the school committee voted to do a new public comment to start off in the beginning of the meetings. Is there anyone here who is going to talk during public comment? Seeing none, we will move on. Ooh.
Oh.
Do we lose power? Well, I'll just talk. Is this still on? Okay. The next up is the warrants, Mrs. Cohen.
Get the meeting minutes first.
Whoops, sorry. Vote to approve the meeting minutes from November 20th, open session meeting. Did everyone get a chance to review?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So next one will be the warrants, Mrs. Cohen.
I've reviewed and approved the following warrants: school expense warrants, November 20th, 2024, $646,123.25, and school payroll warrants, November 14th, 2024, $1,182,223.80. I wish to enter them into public record.
You got ghosted, yeah. All right, next up is our student rep updates. They're actually both tied up with stuff for tonight, so we're gonna skip over that. On to number 5 is the student spotlight with Mrs. Unruh.
Thank you. I'm actually going to move over to the podium so I can actually see people. This is on too. All right, so tonight I am very honored to recognize one of our Norton High School students, Madison Dufresne. Maddie was actually selected by the National Council for Social Studies to present at their annual conference this year at the Heinz Convention Center in Boston. This is the largest national conference for social studies education and includes teachers, administrators, and school district leaders, researchers, as well as those who work for work for organizations focused on social studies education. Each spring, DESE celebrates the work of 8th through 12th graders in civics across the states through their science fair style civics showcase. Last year, students from 70 schools participated in 3 regional civics project showcases held at Bridgewater State University, the Worcester DCU Center, and UMass Amherst. These showcases provided students with the opportunity to share their civics project with the local community, advisors and peers, receive feedback on their work, and be recognized for their civic engagement. Of the hundreds of presenters, only 30 were selected by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to present at the national conference in Boston. Notably, Maddie was one of these students, and we also had another student from Norton High School who was not able to join us tonight, Brooke Carling. Tonight, I am thrilled to recognize Madison Dufresne, whose project was selected for her exemplary nature and how highly rated and commended it was during the spring conferences. This commendation was based on feedback from local community advisors who attended each regional conference, including local legislators, educators, community leaders, and others. I'd like to welcome Maddie up to receive her certificate of recognition. And I'm going to have you come up and explain your civics project. Okay, come on up. I'm going to let Madison explain her civics project to you so you guys know what she worked on.
So for my civics project, I wanted to focus on children who have had a parent incarcerated or is a part of the justice system. So my whole idea was kind of creating like a safe space, an environment that they felt like they belonged in some of the scarier places they might have to endure while their parent is going through the incarceration process. So what I did is I created book nooks and I put them in probation offices and police stations and things like that. It had a variety of books for all ages, chapter books, picture books, everything like that. And then I also added some resources like a Sesame Street episode that talks about that and things like that, so they can create positive memories with their parents or other family members, and kind of have a more positive outlook on the whole system.
Amazing.
Any questions, comments?
That's incredible. Excellent job. That's wonderful.
Your certificate, and we'll invite Dad up as well.
Come on, Dad. Hop up, Dad.
All right, come on up, Dad. Is that Uncle Tim in too?
I was gonna say, you want Uncle Timmy up there too?
Oh, Uncle Timmy. Not even Tim. Come on up, Uncle Timmy. Thank you, Mr. Tim. Congratulations.
Good job, man. And next up on the agenda is the NEED grant announcement.
Hi, I'm Sandy Bucheri. I'm the VP of NEED, and thank you very much for having us tonight. Here we have Jen Farley, Emily. We are Norton Embracing Educational Development, or NEED. We are a volunteer nonprofit organization who fundraises throughout the year to enhance curriculum and support teachers in Norton by providing a teacher grant program. Since it began, NEED has had the honor of giving out over $200,000 to teachers and staff in the Norton Public Schools. Tonight, we would like to thank the teachers and staff who have submitted grant requests and acknowledge all of this year's recipients. Some teachers were able to attend tonight and speak about their grants. So when we get to your school, please feel free to come and join. At the JC Solomons, we funded a grant in the amount of $1,592.01 to replace the whiteboards in 2 of the 3rd grade classrooms for Sarah Elves and Carrie Goodrich. It's up to you. You don't have to if you want.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So Sarah Alice couldn't come tonight, so we kind of drafted up a little thank you just to let everyone know what we received. So first off, Sarah and I are so excited to be able to get new whiteboards for our students. It goes without saying that this is such an invaluable tool to our students who use it daily, and they benefit tremendously from new and clean whiteboards to write on and to see. As elementary teachers, we often move classrooms, so sometimes it's tricky if you inherit, damaged materials or damaged boards, especially with the boards that have been there for 20 years.
Recording in progress.
To have these brand new boards, and we really, really thank you, NEED, because we realize this is not, a traditional NEED grant that you would normally fund, but we're just so grateful that you decided to support this tool for us. So thank you so much.
So at the Yale, we funded a grant in the amount of $4,140.89 to start for the start of Sensory Room with Michelle Lagarde and Susan Bergstrom. This project aims to create a sensory space within the school that provides a calming and stimulating environment, enabling students to regulate their emotions, reduce stress, and improve their focus and attention, and enhancing their ability to access and engage in learning. At the district level, I don't think we have anyone from Yale, right? No, okay. So at the district level, we funded a grant for the amount of $5,238 for professional development in the speech and language pathologist department. Do you guys want to come up? Or? Okay, sure.
Thank you, everyone. We just want to start by saying thank you so much for supporting our department and the students of Norton Public Schools with this NEED grant. Without this, we wouldn't be able to accomplish the vision that we have in mind. We believe that communication is a fundamental human right, And it's very crucial to how we connect, form relationships, learn, and navigate our world. With this grant, we seek to close the gaps of access and inclusion for our students with communication disabilities. Our vision is to create an inclusive learning community where every student has the tools that they need to thrive. The grant will support us to take meaningful steps toward that vision by increasing awareness and education for our staff, our students, and our families. It will also help us to build capacity with the use of AAC consistently and effectively within all our classrooms from pre-K to 12 and beyond. This will ensure that every single student who would benefit will have access to the tools they need. The impact of this grant will be seen not only academically, but also through the lens of the whole child's social emotional wellness. It will bring to them a sense of dignity, empowerment, and belonging. These will all be embedded in their day-to-day learning experiences. By creating this sustainable, district-wide AAC program, our work will set up students for lifelong success at school and in their relationships, their communities, as well as their future life and career paths. The grant is about hope. It's about giving all of our students the opportunity to share their voices and be heard. And with your support, we can break down the barriers that get in the way of that currently. We can create a learning environment where everybody is heard, valued, and included. So thank you for believing in us as a staff and as a student body. We believe with your support on the district level and through the Need Foundation that the best is yet to come.
So there's also more. So we facilitate more funds for the staff of the Norton Public Schools by coordinating mini grants that are amounts of $500 or less in several months throughout the year. And just in the months of October and November, the mini grants have helped to raise an additional $3,182.21 for Norton Public Schools. So at the LG, we were able to help facilitate popping keyboards. At the Yale, a class set of chapter books, an ST Math reward water bottle set. At the middle school was a science project for protist earthworms and cells and some ukulele tree stands. And at the high school, the National Honor Society craft donations, electronic balance scales, and a cappella training workshop. So again, the total we were able to give out was just over $10,000 in need grants and just over $3,000 in community-funded mini grants, which is absolutely amazing. So we couldn't do that with the support of the town and everyone that involves and helps us. So every time you get an N in your driveway or you buy, which we tend to really do great with, you buy an Art to Remember project or donate to a mini grant, drop off a bag of clothing for the Savers Drive, which will be in April, or participate in our big auction in the spring, you're funding these grants, and we rely largely on our fundraisers and not corporate sponsors, so it's really the community participating with us that makes it possible. So thank you so much to everyone. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any comments?
I have one. I just wanted to thank Need for all of their generosity and work with us for the many years. We have had such an incredible partnership between our school staff and Need, and we are so grateful for all of the support that the organization provides to us as a school community. I think the mini grants have been a huge game changer because those come out every single month, and every single month, or most months, we see something from all 5 schools. And it's so wonderful because they can be small little things that just make a big difference in our classrooms. So thank you to Need for facilitating that, for always advocating for our staff and for our students in our community, and for just being a wonderful partner. Thank you.
Next up on the agenda is the YMCA Community Partnership with Mrs. Kate Messier.
All Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. I'm Kate. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for the Attleboro Norton Y. I have been in town for a little over a year now, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to come here and say hello and tell you a little bit about what we're currently doing in Norton, and I hope share some of the stuff that I've had the opportunity to do with other communities in the past. I have been in the business for about 25 years. Youth development has always been my passion. I'm a certified elementary school teacher. In fact, I ran into one of your teachers who I grew up with working in out of school time at the Y here tonight that I haven't seen in forever. I fell in love with Norton this summer at Camp Finberg. If you don't know, Camp Finberg is our large outdoor camp at the Outdoor Center that's just up the road. We served about 1,000 different kids. About 50% of them came from Norton. We're on to celebrate our 100 years at Camp Finberg next year as well. One of the only things that has bummed me out since I got here is that we do not have a greater engagement with the school community and the family community in Norton. And that is my passion and one of my true goals, and frankly one of the reasons why I chose Attleboro Norton Y to continue my career. So currently we're offering our amazing Camp Finberg for about 13 weeks in the summer. We try to follow your calendar so that the moment your kiddos get out of kindergarten till the moment they go back, we can take care of them up the street so that families can work and you all can get ready. We offer summer family memberships, and I think this is sort of the best kept secret. We have a beautiful outdoor pool complex, a gorgeous playground, hiking trails that abut Edith Reed, and for about $200 for your entire family for the whole summer, you can come and enjoy our pool club after camp in the evenings during the week and in the summertime. I'm super excited to hopefully work with folks on some town-wide discounts for programs like that, and particularly with our school department. And if you all don't know, you currently do have a corporate membership agreement with our YMCA, and you are all entitled to discounted memberships and services at our Y as well. We also are hosting an outdoor, fully licensed preschool all school year long out at Camp Finberg. We have 15 kiddos who work with our educators and spend about 80% of their time. They were very muddy today. It's a really unique program, really powerful stuff. And then the other thing that we've really been working on is community special events, and I have to say I'm a huge fan of Need, and we had Need out to Camp Finberg, and unfortunately we sprinkled on you. Our sprinkler system went on the fritz, and in our family movie the sprinklers went off, and that's just, yeah, that's par for the course, but what a wonderful partnership. I have the ability to host really great community events out at Camp Finberg. We had about 400 families come out to our trunk or treat that was free of charge this year. Santa Claus is coming to Camp Finberg for the first time on Saturday morning. Our wonderful fire department here is going to assist us with safely lighting s'mores in our fire pit so that families can enjoy s'mores with Santa. We've got an Easter egg roll coming up and the 100th anniversary of Camp Finberg Camp Carnival. So those are some of the things that we've got going on right now, and if we could please go to the next slide, I'd like to talk to you about some of the things that I'd love to be doing. So currently at our YMCA, we offer second graders, every single second grader in the Attleboro community comes as part of their school day to our pool to work with our aquatic staff, largely free of charge, to take part in an 8-week safety around water, true swim lessons, because that's the age when kids need to learn how to swim. Water safety is critical. This is New England. We are rife with oceans, ponds, lakes, rivers. That is a program that I would love to extend to Norton. We do not have, it's a little cold for the pool at Finberg, but right over the line at our Pleasant Street branch, which is now our Child Development Center, I do host an indoor pool. It is largely underutilized and would love to offer programs like that to this community as well. I believe it's a critical service and a huge part of the mission of the YMCA to keep kids safe. I'm desperate to serve your school-age kids in a way that's not just at summer camp. I believe strongly in the YMCA's out-of-school time model. We are expert in providing before and after school care, school vacation care, care before and after preschool when you have limited hours or if you ever enter into half-day K. That is our business. We serve the whole family, and I would love the opportunity down in the future to think about what that could look like in the future, whether it is licensed childcare or enrichment programs that are a complement to what's already going on in the schools. I have a wonderful Y on the Move model where folks like Andrea from our camping services department come out to you, to the schools, to provide programs and services in health and wellness education, nutrition, sports and recreation, and most of all, leadership, character, and citizenship, which I think is really never been more important for our young people, really learning how to be good citizens, how to be respectful, responsible citizens, and that's the mission of the YMCA. I have gotten the privilege of seeing hundreds of young people learn and grow at the middle school and high school level through leadership development programs, workforce readiness programs. We have lots of your high schoolers working at our summer camp, doing an amazing job, probably some future teachers here in the district, hopefully too, because we've got some talented young kiddos, and I'd like to be able to expand that again beyond summer into a more holistic, robust, whole family, whole child experience. I'm sure that there are ample opportunities for us to collaborate. I know that you have a Parks and Rec department, but I know that it's hard to resource that full time. No one knows better than me the competition for fields and gym space, and you all invested that in your incredible fields, but now it's a little bit hard to do certain things on them, but I've got a field at Camp Finberg, and I've got that space, and I would be proud to host any community events, town events, partnership events. Most of the time, I just want people to come out to the camp and see it, because even though it's been there for 100 years, I still think there's a lot of mystery about who the Y is in the Norton community, and hopefully this will debunk a little bit of that, and as we move forward, share a little bit about what the vision looks like down the road. And so when it comes time to think about things like Founders Day and everything like that, I do hope that you will think of us, because again, we have a great capacity, and I have a deep desire to continue to get people out to Finberg and experience everything that we have here. A couple of other things that I can share with you. Next slide, please. Some of what the Y brings to the table, as I mentioned, I have a great ability to work together with school departments, community businesses, towns, to provide worksite wellness programs, discounted membership opportunities, universal membership opportunities. We have some schools who have our yoga staff come in to provide yoga for the teachers after school. So the opportunities are really endless there, and I don't think there's ever been more of a time to get creative about wellness benefits, as stress and sort of that kind of stuff has never been higher. I mean, the other thing that we are a 501c3, we are eligible for lots of different grant funding because of that, and as we've grown, as the Y has grown, the concept of YMCA and town and public partnerships has continued to expand across the country. Shared space, shared services, those types of things, and we're eligible for different types of financial support than towns are that we can bring to the table as leverage funding in some cases as well. I have great access to scholarship funds for Norton residents. Camp is expensive, childcare is wildly expensive. People are having to make a choice, well, do I go to work or earn even maybe less than I'm going to pay for childcare? So we have programs and services that I think are underutilized and not talked about to ensure that there's access for all. We have the ability to give the school department weeks of summer camp to give to families in need, short-term memberships to give to families in need, and just in general, sort of whatever else you all are looking for. The Y can't be everything to everybody. There was a time when I would stand before you and say, I'm gonna help you increase your literacy scores by 25%, but I'm not going to say that because that's your job, that's the faculty's job. The job of the Y is to build strong communities, support families, rip down access barriers to kids getting to school every day or parents getting to work. and also just making sure that communities are a great place to live and work in, because there's awesome stuff like S'mores with Santa and great Parks and Rec partnerships and everything like that. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that this is a lot. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm very passionate about my work. The Y changed my life when I was a very young person. So I truly do believe in it. And I think Norton is a community tailor-made for a really strong partnership with the Y. You guys love it here. You stay here. Multi-generational families live here, and that's the identity that the Y is. So again, thank you for your time. My contact information is in the slides. Miss Anderson knows how to get in touch with me. I'm all over the website, so please don't hesitate to reach out if anything here piqued your interest and you'd like to sort of talk further about opportunities.
I just wanted to say, I had my son go to Camp Finberg, and it was the best experience. He was very upset that I had only signed him up for the 2 weeks, and I had already promised him for next summer we will be signing up for at least a month. So I just want to compliment the program that you guys have set up out there. It is absolutely wonderful. And from another side, I'm a pediatric occupational therapist. I work with a lot of kids with varying disabilities and abilities. And Camp Finberg is one that we always recommend for summer, because you guys do such a wonderful job including everybody, no matter what their skill set is, and you really take the time to look at their IEPs if they are on one and be able to accommodate. So I just want to commend you for the program that you have going. It is fantastic. So
that's my favorite thing to hear, honestly. Andrea and the team at camp, 1,000 kids is a lot of kids, and it's a lot of days. It's a lot. You guys had a long summer this year, so I thank you for that compliment and echo the sentiments that there is a really wonderful and strong program out there.
Yeah. So.
Awesome. Okay, stay dry tonight, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up on the agenda, review and vote on the capital improvement plan for Springtown meeting. Mrs. Hatfield.
Okay, so what I have is our spring town meeting for FY26 capital improvement plan. We went over these items and made priorities with Justine and Audrey and Jen, Wade, and myself. So I'm just going to go over the top 4 that we have presented for you. The first one is the second phase of our fire device replacement, and this is the completion of loops 7 through 9. And if this gets approved, we do this in the summer. The quote is attached for that from Siemens. The second is the second entrance and exit access road at the Norton Middle School and the Norton High School. The Norton Middle School one has been on this for a couple of years now, and we have recently decided to add the exit access road in the back of the high school. We don't have, that's a preliminary number, the $125,000. We don't have a quote yet. We're working with Jared at DPW, and he's working hard to get us those as well. We just didn't have them in time. The third is indoor carpet at the LGN library in their main office. This is another estimate for $75,000. We also are waiting on that quote. We went down with a vendor recently to look at those 2 areas, and we should be getting that soon. We'll obviously adjust these numbers before we submit it, because we're going to get them for the 20th. And that carpet is from, I believe, the 1980s.
Good year for carpet.
And
it's not as shaggy as you think it would be for that date.
And the last one is technology displays, similar to what we did in the high school. We would do a phased approach and do a lease, either 3 to 5, and we just use those numbers based off of what we did for the middle school as well. It would be a lease to own. Do you have any questions?
I just want to say, so after having several conversations with the committee about the capital process and how it seems like we're keeping the same things on for a considerable amount of time, we instituted a capital subcommittee, and we met with Audrey and Justine, and I felt it was really beneficial for our team to walk through the process with people and kind of be able to dig into the weeds and the rationale for a lot of these items. As we explained, this submission is due to Town Hall by December 20th, but it will not be voted on at town meeting until the middle of May. So it's a very, very long lead time, and things come up. You know, when you have 5 or so months between when you submit something and then actually it gets voted on, things come up over time. And so we had a lot of conversations about what our goals are for this moving forward. But I think it was definitely worthwhile, so I will also refer to Audrey and to Justine if they have anything that they want to add, or things that they learned from the process that they feel is important for the rest of the group.
I just think, just related to number 2, I had brought up, and I think Audrey echoed that as well, and I think Jen and Christine and Wade have also mentioned this, so I'm just going to mention it again, that the redoing that access road, I feel like is a benefit for not just the schools, but also for the town, and to maybe look at that project as more of a joint effort versus just coming from the schools. So I just, again, wanted to publicly put that out there, that I think it's a overall benefit for.
It absolutely is, and when we think specifically about the middle school, how we have students and families kind of exiting the middle school property through that second access point, but it's also really important for our public safety and accessing the building if there was an emergency. The same thing with the high school. Right now, that back entrance or exit is right between the dentist's office and some homes. It's typically used to get buses out of the parking lot in the morning, but it is a second entrance and exit for emergency vehicles. We live in New England. Right now, both of those access points are kind of like a gravel. A day like today with this kind of rain, tons of potholes, it makes it challenging for things to, be accessed. So I appreciate that point, Justine. It definitely is a mutual project for the community.
I think too with that high school back entrance and even the middle school, it's becoming pick up and drop off too, because it's, oh, there's the school, I can tell my child to meet me here. Especially at the high school.
As much as we ask people not to.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see like there's different cars, because I drop my daughter off every day, so it's like, oh, that kid must have class on that side of the school and they're running a tad bit late, so they go rushing to one side. But it's challenging at the high school, and some people try and sneak in that way and make it a little easier, but ultimately it's not. So, but in the middle school, they definitely stack up in that parking lot.
The other thing we looked at on this list was the generators.
Yes.
And so that's why we have priority for JCS, but we're hoping we can address that for our fall.
Yes, so generators, you guys will notice it is a brand new item on our capital request building. For those of us who either live on the west side of town or work on the west side of town, there is something about that area near JCS where we just lose power way more often than anywhere else in town. JCS, the building was built in 1978. We have a number of classrooms that are in what's called our central core that have very limited access to outside light. And so, when you lose power on a day like today, which thankfully we made it through, no guarantees on tomorrow.
I'll take that.
No guarantees on tomorrow. But it really, we need to have something as a backup. Again, it's a large building. It can be used for community purposes if we were to have a generator in that building. And also, there is so much now that runs on power all day long, like our cameras, our phone systems. We want to make sure our students are safe in school. And so we're starting the process. Wade spoke to someone earlier today. The first step for a generator would be to have someone to come out and engineer the project, which is about a $5,000 to $10,000 cost, to engineer and put the bid together, right? Was it correct, Christine, 5 to 10? Yes, thank you. I'm like, I feel like that number doesn't sound like a lot. And so, I mean, ultimately, a generator is a very big expense, hundreds of thousands of dollars. But we do believe that putting this onto the capital request shows a little bit of forward thinking, and it also shows that, you know, we want to invest in our buildings for our students, but also for the community as a whole.
Just a quick question, the fire device, did we get the, whatever loops we voted on back, and that was supposed to go over the winter break?
1 through 6 are being done between Christmas and New Year's.
Perfect. So that will complete the entire middle school loops, all 7 through 9 stuff.
1, 7 through, yes, so that is our first priority on this list. It's about $48,000. That would complete the middle school fire panel project, which has been on this for a number of years. So we would love to get that crossed off.
And then that 48 doesn't include electrical work for removing. So how are we planning to pay for that aspect of that project?
We should be able to cover that cost.
Through the facilities
Yeah.
revolving?
Right.
And then, the second entrance, that, we're not making a new entrance, we're just repaving the entrances we have in exits.
Correct.
Yeah, there's no paved area. It's
Correct.
on a day like today, it would be, it's like driving through soup.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to add to Justine's comments, if you will, would be the one that goes to the park is also a safety concern, being a dirt road, I think, or gravel, whatever we want to kind of call it. So I definitely agree, you know, with that statement of there's mutual benefits to, you know, just other than just the schools.
And you know, this time of year, it makes it really difficult to plow. If we get snow, because you don't have a hard surface underneath there, it's just the gravel. It makes it very challenging, whether if it's a town DPW truck coming through and clearing that entrance, or one of our own trucks for the schools. It's something that definitely just needs to be addressed. And so the cost keeps going up. It's not coming down at any time. So our group said, you know, we really just need to push this forward.
Did we previously vote to have that on and we pulled it back for something?
It's
I thought I
been on
remember
there for quite a while. It just hasn't
Was this the
actually
one
gone
that was
through.
pushed because of the JCS elevator?
Yes.
I feel like it was.
It was.
we
Yes.
put-
Yeah, I think you're right,
Right.
Karen. Last fall, I believe.
Right.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions?
Nope.
Moving on.
I don't vote on that.
You have to
Oh,
vote.
sorry. Do I have a motion to approve the capital plan for springtime meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Number 9, recommendation from the district alignment committee.
All right, I'm gonna go back up to the thing.
Podium.
Yes, thank you, podium. It's been a long day. Yes, please, Nick. Alrighty. So, as most of you are aware, and some of our watchers at home, we have been taking a look at just the state of our district in terms of student enrollment, school start times, the way that we have our students, like we have 2 K-3 schools, our 4-5, our 6-8, and our 9 to 12 high school. And we spent a lot of time really looking at this work, and I think ultimately it took us a little bit longer than we had initially hoped, just because there are so many moving factors, and you know, wanting to make sure that we're providing the committee with as much information as possible for you to make an educated decision, but also looking at the future of Norton and our schools, and thinking about what makes the most sense for us today and you know, 10 years down the road. So this committee was developed last spring, early spring, with the task of researching best practices around school start times for students in pre-K to 12. We were asked to look at grade level configuration, transportation, and then also districting, the way that we line up our schools, the way JCS and LGN are split into 2 smaller community schools. We were asked to look at current and projected enrollment trends, look at our special education services, and then also make sure that we're engaging our students and our families in this work, because they have a huge, huge impact based on the decisions that we make here. So I wanted to share, I could literally present to you guys for hours tonight about all the work that we've done over these last many months. But I tried to take some of the data that I felt was really important to the work that we're going to do and the decisions that we're going to make. One of the things that we asked both our parents and our teachers was, what is the most important factor for you when we're making this decision? And so as you can see that school extra, and outside extra were two of our biggest categories. That it all centers around providing students with access to extracurricular activities outside of the school day. So whether those are school-sponsored activities like our athletics, clubs, band, or things that students are doing on their own free time, dance, gymnastics, other fun events for themselves. Both our families and our teachers know that is one of the most important aspects for our children and for their childhood, making them well-rounded and giving them lots of opportunities. So that was something that when we finally are presenting our recommendation to you tonight, that was something that we really weighed heavily. Additionally, instructional time was really important, as well as giving our teachers the opportunity for collaboration. We did not want to compromise any of our academic expectations or opportunities that our teachers have now in order to work together and to plan together. If anything, those are things that need to be increased and enhanced in whatever iteration we move forward with. So that was something that was important specifically to our teaching staff. One of the things that was not as important as what we thought was more sleep. It was definitely not as high on the ratings as we thought it would be for our families. Also sibling care. We thought, there must be people out there that are relying on their older students to watch younger students. It was actually a very small population of those people that participated. So having this information and being able to come back to us really helped to kind of guide our conversations and to guide our recommendations to you tonight. So I thought that was important to share with you. This is also how people are satisfied with the current start times. So unfortunately, JCS and LGN are not broken down in this iteration, which we know are two very, very different things. But overall, in grades 4 to 8, people are fairly happy with their child's start and end times. And this was another one that I think is really interesting for you all to take a look at. This information comes directly from our teachers. And you can see JCS is the huge outlier here. When you ask our JCS teachers, are your students ready to learn when they come in to start their day? Yes, they are absolutely ready to learn. I mean, 9 o'clock, those kids have been up for a couple hours at that point and they are ready to go. Audrey's giving me the look like, yes, my kid's been up for hours at that time of the day. But you take a look and look how much it drops off in the afternoon. Dismissal for JCS, the school technically ends at 3:35. And by the end of that school day, our students in kindergarten through grade 2 are exhausted and done. What's not really surprising is when you look at the high school data, whether they're getting there in the morning or leaving in the afternoon, high school students are high school students, and it's really a mixed bag depending on, what teachers are reporting. The other thing that I thought was really interesting too was taking a look at the LGN. Almost 80% of the LGN teachers said that their students come in the morning and they are ready to learn. With their start time of 7:45 in comparison to 9:05, it's nice to know that they still feel that early in the morning their students are available for learning. And you can also see that their end of their day is significantly higher than the other elementary schools. We also asked our students. We asked a lot of students, and believe me, high schoolers have very strong opinions on this topic. Whether it was through the survey data that they shared with us or through my superintendent advisory committee, none of our students had any problem telling me exactly how they felt about this topic. So a lot of our students do work. Very few students work in the morning before high school. We have a lot of students that work in the after school or in the evening. A lot of students actually go from school to sports to work. And I can't even begin to imagine, because I think I give them a lot of credit as our young people. They're doing a great job. And then we also asked them a little bit about their tardiness in their schoolwork habits, which is really interesting as well. So, almost 60% of our students said, no, I am never tardy. And we're, about 36 or so said, yeah, sometimes. Very small reportings of yes, sometimes, or, yes, always, or yes, often. And the other thing that I thought was interesting as well was that when students reported on their tardiness, they're saying that they're typically only 5 to 10 minutes late for school. The majority of students are not showing up an hour or an hour and a half late, which is encouraging. And actually, when you take a look at our attendance trends and our data, it does correlate with that. So it's, the students were actually very good self-reporters. And then we asked them a few other questions. I struggled to stay awake while doing homework. It was about strongly agree, 11%, 41% struggle to stay awake while doing homework. My question as a high school parent is, what time are you starting your homework? Because I know that oftentimes between getting out of school and then doing athletics and dinner and socialization and all of these other things, sometimes my own teenager isn't starting her homework until 9:30 or 10. So, and then we also asked, do you struggle to stay awake in class? And again, this was kind of a 50-50 split. But I think a lot of these things, what time are students going to bed, what time are they waking up, what are their other activities? And then this one is probably my favorite. I think that the high school should start later than it does now. Strongly disagree about 35% of our students, and it was very, very interesting to see some of their comments. Some of them said, no, I have to work in the afternoon, or I have swim practice at 6 a.m. I don't want to go back home and go back to bed, or I'll just stay up later. They were so honest with their feedback. It was really, really interesting. So that is asking them if they think they should start later. So this is our current status. We currently have 3 tiers of transportation. In the morning, we have the high school and LGN buses that go out and they do a split route. So one group of buses goes around town and picks up the high school students. The other group of buses goes around town and picks up the students for LGN. From there, we go down to tier 2, where currently our students in grades 4 through 8 ride on the same bus together. So our Yale students and middle school students are currently picked up simultaneously at their bus stops. They are dropped first at the Yale school and then at the middle school. This is actually our most crowded bus run. Of course, because you're grouping 2 sets of students together, but we have the highest ridership when it comes to students in grades 4 through 8. Because oftentimes parents are working or students are involved in after-school activities or whatever it may be, these buses in most cases are very, very full. And then finally, our last tier, we have 10 buses that go around town and pick up our JCS students. And I think it's important for us to include that financial impact for you all as well. Our current bus contract is $1.2 million.
Jen, can I just
Yes,
ask a
please,
question?
Nick.
Because I think, I was obviously sat on this committee, but someone brought up a great point.
Do you want to go back to the last slide?
Just this current start times.
Sure.
Why are they the way they are?
Money? So these start times have existed. High school, LGN, and JCS have had these same start times, I'm going to age myself, for roughly 21 years.
Yeah.
The very first year I taught at JCS, we had a different set of start times. LGN had the late start, they started around 9:05, and JCS started around 8:30. And we were looking for cost-saving measures back in 2003. And a decision was made, and I'll be really honest, I was a lowly second grade teacher at the time, I wasn't super involved in the process. First year, was just trying to make it through the day. And so these changes were moved. I believe we actually moved from a 4-tier busing system to a 3-tier busing system, and it was a huge savings at that time. When this change was made, we were told it was a 1-year trial. And so 21 years later, we are still living the 1-year trial for those 3 start times.
Thank you.
A few years ago, we adjusted times at the middle school and the Yale in order to combine those routes. That was, Sherry, I believe you were here, Dan, I believe you were also here when we made that last chance,
And
that
I
last
think there were
change.
only a couple minutes either way, it wasn't drastic.
They weren't huge, but we were
Seven-
transporting them separately.
Yeah.
And it was, I think we ended up saving, I'm gonna go out of heart and say $300,000 or $400,000.
Yeah, I think it was 300,000 if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and it wasn't as much as maybe we had hoped when we initially looked. And there was a lot of concerns for families about having 4th graders ride the bus with 8th graders. And I think, overall, we've done a good job of kind of separating those students out over the years and working on that process. Are there things that come up from time to time? Of course, like any other bus situation. But yes, so hopefully that answers the why around why we currently do what we do.
That's perfect, thank you.
I think the other thing with the savings was there's the regulations around busing and who's provided it, so we're combining the 2 schools that are most logical, but only K to 6 is required by state law. And that was our biggest thing, is so we have 2 grades that aren't to be required, but they're going to the same school and likely at the same bus stop. So that was one of the big lack of savings, I think, in the long run, is because we said, no, let's keep those 2 grades on the bus as well if the space.
So the Mass regulations require school districts to transport any student in kindergarten through grade 6 who live 2 miles or more from their school. And so anyone above grade 6, grades 7 through 12, are not required transportation regardless of the distance from their home to the school. Currently, we offer busing for all students in K to 12. Anyone that lives outside that 2-mile radius in K to 6 is transported for free. Anyone within that 2-mile radius in K to 6, or any student in grades 7 to 12 are charged our bus fee. So after, looking at a lot of different options, playing around with times, playing around with buses, we came up with 3 different options. So option 1 aligns the high school and middle school times. So instead of transporting students together in grades 4 to 8, we would now be transporting students together in grades 6 through 12. They would drop off at the high school, and then they would turn back around and drop students off at the middle school. Very similar to our combined Hay middle school run now. What would happen from there? The buses would leave, and the JCS buses would go and pick up the JCS students. LGN buses would go pick up the LGN students, and they would have the same start time at 8:35. And then finally, the Yale school would would move down to that last bus, or the last tiered time. So ultimately, this solves some of your problems, but it doesn't solve all of them. It takes the problem of having a late start and pushes it off to the Yale school, which is not something we really want to do, because we're pretty clear on the fact that a 9:15 start is really not great. However, it would bring JCS and LGN to an aligned start time, which is one of our primary goals. We have a lot of concerns about JCS and LGN being so far apart. So that was option 1. Option 2 aligns the middle school and high school start times with the same type of combined 6 to 12 route. And that what we would do this time is we would combine all of our students in K to 5. So if next year the bus stops at the Schleicher House, they would be picking up Colton, who would be a 4th grader at the time, as well as the girls who would still be at JCS. It would not be 2 separate bus runs. We would have students kindergarten through grade 5 picking up at that same time. And what they would do is they would come and they would drop off all the Yale students first, because they would come to the center of town, and they would go back out to drop off at JCS LGN. So this brings all of the elementary students to a time that's a little bit more aligned. It brings us from 3 tiers of buses down to 2 tiers, and it also brings the high school and the middle school to an aligned time. And then finally, option 3 is where we would reverse the start times for elementary and secondary, bringing the Yale School to our very early 7:45 start, with JCS and LGN following very closely behind, and the high school and middle school taking those later starts, 8:40 and 8:50. This actually addresses some of the thoughts around sleep study research for adolescents, and it also takes advantage of the the fact that our youngest learners are up early and kind of raring to go. However, the challenges of this option are honestly getting our high school and middle school students out so late. When you take a look at all of our surrounding districts, a great place to look is the Tri-Valley League, because that's who we compete against in all of our athletics. This would push us to the latest start and end time within the TVL. And one of the concerns that we have is about students missing instructional time for athletics. It's great to be a student athlete, but you should not be missing core instructional time in order to be a student athlete. So that's option 3. Ultimately, in an ideal situation, we believe from this working group would be option 2. It takes the start and end times for the middle school and high school, it aligns the elementary schools, and it also eliminates that 3rd tier of busing. With any decision, there is no easy decision, and there are benefits to this recommendation, and there are also challenges to this recommendation. So I'm going to walk you through those now. So, benefits of option 2. Consistent start and end time for our students in 6 through 12. We have a serious need for collaboration between Norton Middle School and Norton High School when it comes to academics. In years past, we used to have academic coordinators who oversaw curriculum at a middle school, and over time, those jobs have changed so much that there really is a lack of vertical alignment between our students in our curriculum in 6 through 8 and then that of 9 through 12. Currently, we have middle school students that are great athletes and they play up on some of our high school teams, and they are missing core instruction on a regular basis in order to get to games on time. As someone who has been in charge of teaching and learning for 12 years, I don't think that's okay. And then additionally, within the Mayflower League, which is what our middle school participates in, there are days where our students need to travel to a middle school away game and are also missing core instruction during that time. I think regardless of what our outcomes are of this work, that is something that we have to take a look at. But moving them earlier would eliminate that concern. There would be no more missing instructional time for our student athletes. This is also giving us the opportunity to take a look at, is there a way for us to share staff across the middle school and high school? And is there also a way for some of our middle schoolers that are really, looking for enrichment opportunities to potentially take a class at the high school? If you're able to get them onto a more of a consistent schedule, it gives us a lot of time and a lot of opportunity to look at different opportunities for students when it comes to academics. We also really talked about the idea of student-to-student mentoring. How wonderful would it be to be able to have high school students come down and work with some of our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in some of those clubs that we have, whether it's, Benson's not here tonight, but he does a lot of work with Project 351 and the Playbook Initiative, our GSA, our student councils. There are so many great opportunities for us to see some collaboration and some really awesome benefits for our students, but the way that our times work right now, it's just not beneficial. For our elementaries, consistent start and end time for the first time in over 25 years. I can't go back much further than that, but I'm going to tell you it's been at least 25 years since we've had some consistency in our elementary structure. Teacher collaboration and planning across grade levels. We do so much work on a daily basis talking about student data and intervention planning and having conversations about teaching and learning and how students are doing with a particular content or subject area. And we don't have the opportunity for our third grade teachers at JCS to really ever talk to our third grade teachers at LGN. And if we could do this, we could look, to me, having a grade level data meeting, looking at all third graders and looking at what the needs are of the grade level as a whole, instead of having these pockets, that would be absolutely huge when it comes to sending these students off to the Yale School where they're going to combine as one fourth grade team. Right now, when we have our early release days, LGN gets out at 11 o'clock. JCS students don't leave until 12:30, sometimes later than that. So we really only have about an hour to an hour and a half of time where we can actually bring people together for shared professional development. And then also, this is something that needs to be looked at, but we also could have the potential to consolidate some of our special education programs based on student need. As of right now, we have best classrooms at both JCS and LGN. We only have the language-based classroom at JCS. We have grit classrooms at both JCS and LGN. So right now, if a student is in need of a particular program that is not hosted at their elementary school, families need to decide, are they going to take their child and move them to the school across town, which is a totally different time and day and all of that. And potentially it could be one child at JCS and one child at LGN, depending on your family dynamics. If we were able to bring those start times to a more consistent place, we could really look at our numbers and potentially consolidate some of those programs. It would definitely take time. I think it makes Casey a little bit nervous, but I also think there is a huge opportunity here if we had that flexibility. And then while we know it's not a big thing for a lot of our families, it does give the older students that are going to be home earlier. I know right now, LGN and the high school, they're basically home at the same time. So it does support families if they need care for their younger students in the afternoon. But of course, nothing's perfect, right? This change does make the LGN almost a whole hour later than they're currently going. And ultimately, our goal was to bring JCS earlier, not LGN later. So it doesn't alleviate any of our concerns about how students will be prepared for learning later in the afternoon, and they won't have that benefit of that early morning, raring to go experience. I do see some concern from families when we are taking a look at combining these bus routes, having 6th graders ride with high schoolers, and then kindergartners, and I apologize, that should say grade 5. There will be concerns from families about that. I think when it comes to grades 6 through 12, a large majority of the communities around us all do 6 through 12 busing. Their middle schools and their high schools are much more closely aligned than ours are. And I think we've learned a lot of lessons over the years of managing 4th graders and 8th graders and how we've taken steps where the younger students ride at the front of the bus and the older students ride at the back of the bus. And I would also note that once you get to 11th and 12th grade, we have far fewer students riding the bus at that age level because number one, they have their license or their friends do, and they're also involved in so many extracurricular activities after school that many students are riding a late bus or they're getting rides home after practice. So that is something that I think could be fairly easily addressed. There's also the financial implications of busing, which is what I'm going to talk to you about now. Does anyone have any questions about this before I move on to the financial piece?
I had a question. So, did we look at the flip side of what if high school and middle school went earlier? Is there a cutoff time to when they can start?
So I think there's definitely some wiggle room. I don't know that I would go much earlier than 7:30. My own children, I live in Mansfield. My own children start at 7:20. It's extremely early. I think there's definitely opportunities and possibilities for us to look at that and squeak it up a little bit more. I think we would need to work with the high school and middle school staff, we would need to kind of look at some of the possibilities around what we could do to make it all work, but there's definitely some wiggle room
I
there.
mean, I remember going in at 7:05
Yeah.
high school, so, I mean, that was a little bit unnormal, but I didn't know if that was looked at, if that was earlier and we could move our elementary kids earlier too.
And I think there's definitely some possibility within there to do that. I think it would definitely be, and I don't want to speak for anyone on the team because there's no high school people here tonight, but we could definitely.
And I think the committee, when we were looking at that, one of the big things that we looked at was what is the, Department of Pediatrics saying about children in sleep and adolescents starting school early. Like the recommendation is starting after 8:30 for national wide. You know, so when we looked at it being like 7:40, you're already 50 minutes ahead. Like, you know, I think that was the push of why not to go any
Even
earlier.
earlier.
Correct.
I think that's the big challenge at the high school too. I mean, this kid's out at the bus at 6:45 in some parts of town. So I mean, they're already out drastically early, and they may not be starting for another hour. But on the flip side, all three of my kids were JCS kids. This time of year they're getting home and it's dark.
Yes.
And that's always been a challenge. And I think back many years ago, when we talk about after school activities, not even at school, but kids playing winter soccer, there's a facility nearby that every session gives you a game at 4 o'clock. So when your kids are in JCS, it's like you see the line of parents that are soccer parents having to go pick up their kids because there's no way to get them off the bus and get there. So, it's just the little things. When I was shocked when I moved to town 20 some odd years ago that to me that was a very late start for that JCS school.
It is. It absolutely is. And for those who have either had children go through it or lived through it as the teacher, it's an extremely long day for the students. It really, truly is. So let me kind of walk you through the financial components of this. So one of the biggest challenges of option 2 is kind of figuring out the busing component. Because if you combine grades 6 through 12, right now, if nothing were to change, we can make it work. But if ridership changes at any way with more students, we are right on the cusp of needing that additional bus. So if we were needed to add 1 bus, it would be a cost of $63,000. Thinking about combining JCS, LGN, and EL, you absolutely need to add 1 bus. And so therefore, if you have to add 1 at the high school level and you have to add 1 at the elementary level, you're looking at a net cost of $144,000 over and above our current busing contract, which I shared with you earlier was $1.2 million. Now, we were all here last year when we had to make some pretty devastating cuts to our system and to our staffing because of our budgeting issues. So we have a couple different options for you guys on how this could actually roll out in a more fiscally responsible way. And I want to share those with you as well. So this goes to show the different impacts of changing the number of buses. Currently, we have the Norton High School and LGN run, and then we have the, that should be Norton High School and middle school. I apologize, I was trying to put this together for you guys super quick. So ultimately, if we could combine the high school and middle school, and we combine the 3 elementary schools, and we did not have to add a bus in any way, shape, or form, it would be a savings of $5,400, which is not a lot of money, but we'll take it. If we had to add 1 bus, it would be the $63,000 increase. And then if we had to add another bus for high school, middle school, and another bus for the elementary schools, that would be $144,000. So a couple different options here.
So quick question.
Yes, please, Dan.
It just kind of popped into my. I know with our bus contract, with our after-school activities regarding sports come to mind. I know one of the big things is none of our drivers in town can take those, what essentially is an overtime run, because we have that tiered system. I don't think the savings would be great, but with this new system, could we potentially, would that save us any money in that respect? Or is that a completely different avenue because it's just a contract with Bloom for this, like, on Monday, we know we need to send a bus to Hopkinton.
Right, so the athletic buses themselves are a different aspect of the contract versus the tiered busing system. So while our drivers who are doing the JCS run are not able to, take on that overtime, there is somebody through Bloom that is able to take on that work. So it really does not impact the actual contract of our AM and PM school runs. Those numbers that we shared with you actually take into account any savings in terms of dropping from 3 tiers down to 2. So if I remember, and Sherry and Dan, you guys might remember this as well, when we changed our busing model several years ago to combine the middle school and the Yale school, I think we had originally anticipated a larger savings than what we ended up with.
Right.
And ultimately, it was because we learned at that time that cutting a tier is not what costs or what saves. It's the actual bus itself.
Mm-hmm.
So moving from 3 tiers down to 2 tiers isn't going to be a big cost savings. It's if you were to say, okay, we don't need 16 buses, now we only need 14 buses. That's where you are able to save more money. So I want to walk you through a couple different options, and I think it's important before we move on that my recommendation to you is that we sit on this for a little bit. I think this is a lot. I think we need to come back and talk about it. So I don't want you to feel like you need to make a decision tonight or any of those things. So one of the options, regardless of what route we decide to go, the committee strongly believes that the best timeline for implementation is actually the fall of 2026. Because a lot of these times are going to be huge shifts for some of our families, specifically our LGN families, and it's really important that we give them a lot of lead time if they need to make adjustments to before or after school care for their families, if they wanted to make work adjustments. And so today being December 11th, we feel like an implementation of September of 25 is rushed for, number one, doing the work that, well, number one, giving you guys the opportunity to make a decision that you feel good about. Number two, for my team to be able to do all of that work in the background in terms of restructuring bus routes and all of these other things that we need to think about, working with our staff, and then also working with our families. So the first option for us is full implementation in the fall of 26 with what I'm calling bus limiting. And it's not a technical term, it's just kind of something we made up. So what we would do is we would not increase the number of buses that we are currently contracted at. We would keep the same number of buses. We would only change from 3 tiers down to 2 tiers. And what we would ask families to do is we would ask families if they are going to be participating in transportation through a paid service, they are not entitled, we would ask that they register for busing by July 1st of 2026. And what we would do is we would place those students that met the deadline on buses as available. All those students would get a bus. Anyone that is, it was obviously students that are guaranteed transportation because of their distance in K-6, all those kids would get placed first en routes, and then we would place all of the students that registered by the deadline. Anyone that registered after July 1 is not guaranteed busing. So if you are not able to, if you miss the deadline, then you are only given a space if one exists for your child. So therefore, obviously, if a space is not available, you would not pay the fee and you would be responsible for transporting your child to and from school. I don't know how popular that would be, but I do think it's important for us to have the conversation about it. As I mentioned earlier, we are only required by law to transport students in kindergarten through grade 6 that live more than 2 miles from their school. Yes, please.
Isn't that already in place?
No, because ultimately we take every registration.
All right, so they send an email that says that, but it's technically
Does-
not.
does it
Yeah.
say it, Christine?
If a particular bus is over capacity, then they can't ride it. But
So-
that's it. And there's only, I think, 2 right now that are at the limit.
So any registrations on those 2 buses, we would say, no, I'm sorry, you can't accommodate. But this would be, I mean, because ultimately you'll have students in K-5 riding on routes where you just had K-3 previously. So we're looking at 2 other grade levels of students. They would be pretty tight. But I appreciate that, so thank you. And I'll be honest, I didn't really, we say that, but.
I could have misread. I thought that was how it
Go ahead,
was
Christine.
already.
It says, I believe it has said in the past, you're not guaranteed. This, I think, would be a little more strict, like, because we give routes already kind of set up with people that have previously ridden before, and the bus company already kind of knows, and then we kind of tweak. But considering we would be starting from scratch, it would be a hard no. They'd set the routes, and then if we had room in certain spaces, we would let on after that.
So it could be, hypothetically, if you and Jen were both to register after the date, and you registered on, I'm just gonna pick some dates, July 15th, and Jen registered on July 30th, but there's a spot on Jen's child, there's a spot for Jen's child. People maybe, it wouldn't be a first come, first serve, it would be strategic based on what's available.
Is our highest ridership in that K-5? Like, what does our ridership look like in these tiers or whatever? Like, because I mean, personally, I see some of the high school buses are a little light at the end of the day. But then I see obviously the Yale and the middle school combined are packed, you know, in the morning. So do we have an idea like how this is going to look? You know, because I would think if we're going to have to add a bus, my assumption it's going to be that K-5 area.
So in currently or in this scenario?
I'm just saying currently, because that's what we can project the numbers,
Right.
because someone in first grade, they're gonna be theoretically riding for 4 more years in
So-
this model.
So you're right, right now the Hay Middle has obviously the most packed buses, those are the ones that have the wait list on 2 of them. It would be at least 2 a seat or more for K through 5. And then the projections were 2 a seat for the larger kids in middle school to high school. So it really, I know this is the best answer, but it really just depends on who rides and where they live. Right now we have 2 high school buses that are very much full. It's just where they live in town, and then there's a couple that are very, very sparse. So I think it really just depends on who registers.
And that's pretty common regardless of the route. Like the middle school and Yale buses are full, but we have a few JCS buses that are packed and some that look very light when they pull in the morning. And LGN is the exact same way. It really is about the route itself. The next option would be full implementation in the fall of 2026, but only limiting students in grades 7 through 12. So this would actually almost divide the cost in half, because we are projecting that we would need that 1 bus for the elementary students to be able to provide transportation for all of our K-5 riders. However, we would use the exact same process for students in grades 7 through 12. And the reason we would target these students is that they are not guaranteed transportation in any way, shape, or form. So parents in grades 7 through 12 would need to sign their child up by July 1st for the bus, and then anything after that students be placed based on availability.
So this might be a silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When we look at these 2 tiers, and maybe this was previous and I missed it, if we have a contract for 16 buses, and we look at the ridership numbers for middle and high school, and we only need 13, can we use those buses then in that middle school? Like, how does that work? Like you said earlier, when we save a bus, it's whatever amount. But if we're contracted for 16 and we need 17, but if we only need, say, 14 for that run, would that be any savings?
Not as much as you would think, right? Because ultimately you need to take the bus out of the equation totally. So if we only needed 14 buses, I feel like I'm doing really complicated, like Common Core math right now, and it's fucking.
I'm just thinking, like you mentioned earlier, kids, my youngest included, they get to be junior, seniors, and they're not on the buses, or they're an athlete and they're picked up after school, or whatever it is. So I think there's going to be less of a need in this 6 to 12 ridership than we think.
So ultimately, if you didn't need 16 buses for that route and you only needed 14, what would change is the number of tiers that bus is going to run. So those 2 buses would only be needed for the elementary ride. So they would be considered a tier 1 bus because it only does one route. If you went from 16 buses needed overall to 14 buses needed overall for those routes, that's where you would see the larger savings. But yes, Dan, it would be a savings, but probably not as much as we would hope.
Yeah, because you gotta also think with the company, that bus that you're gonna need at, give or take, 7:45 to start picking up the elementary school kids, they ain't doing anything with that bus in the morning because they need it. So they're not gonna give you a huge savings on that because it makes no financial business sense whatsoever.
And so in that case, the bus is still ours.
Exactly.
We still have the bus, we use it for at least one tier. So the first tier is the most expensive. So if we needed 15 buses, you're paying for those 15 buses that now belong to Norton and are going to do that first tier. We pay less for every tier after than we do for adding a 16th bus. I mean, ultimately, if money was not an issue, the best way to do this would be to add a couple extra buses, and then you don't have as much of an issue with the actual times themselves because you have the number of buses needed to transport students where they need to go. But ultimately, that's not the reality here. And then I also am giving you kind of like a 2-year rollout. So this would, again, stretch the cost over 2 fiscal years in order to kind of make it more bearable on our budget, but it would not, we would not need to limit any ridership. So this one would start, we would move the high school and the middle school in year 1. We would get LGN and JCS on that shared schedule in year 1, and we would have to have the Yale school do 1 year of that late start that no one wants. And then in year 2, we would move the element. So we would potentially need a bus for the high school and middle school run that first year, which would be the $63,000. The following year, we would go all in, and it would be about another $80,000 to add that second bus when you're taking a look at it. My fear, honestly, in this one, is that we do to the Yale what happened to JCS 20 years ago and say it's going to be a 1-year thing, and then, 21 years later, there's somebody else standing at this podium talking about how we were told it was only going to be for a year. I also want to remind the committee of this, because I think this is really, really important for context and for all of us to consider. We have a huge amount of building that is taking place right now in our community. We have 195 Mansfield Avenue, which is the complex that is next to the Roche Brothers Plaza over towards the Mansfield line. There are 101 units that are opening on December 15th. As of today, we have 1 student that is enrolled at JCS. That mom was totally on her game and got out early. I'm sure we will see more students enroll as this complex opens and more families are moving in. I would not be surprised if right after the holiday break, we get several students from this address. Lloyd Street and Germain Street, which is also known as the Pine Street Cluster, those are the 44 large homes that are going in off of Pine Street. To my knowledge, they are all still being built, and we don't have any families in there yet, but that is coming. Elm Street, there has been a lot of conversations about the current Reed and Barton site that would potentially be mixed use, and potentially up to 200 units there. We have the potential MBTA site, which was tabled at our fall town meeting, but does have the potential of 750 units. There is no timeline on that at all. Nick Iafredi shared this information with me. He is our building inspector. Townwide, we have 4 common driveway lots. So it would be a shared driveway with 3 or 4 homes attached to that shared driveway. We actually have 4 of those that are approved around town. And then we have 50 single family home lots. All of those have been approved, but they are not yet actually permitted for building. So I think it's really important for us to consider that we're making a recommendation to you tonight for a start time, but we have all of these other things that are kind of going on in the background as well. And it's going to be really important for us to be cognizant of all of these projects as they come up, because 195 Mansfield Ave, that is JCS. Lloyd Street, Germain Street, that is LGN. Elm Street, JCS. The MBTA site, we have no idea where that's going to end up. But any one of these projects, specifically I want to say Elm Street and the MBTA site, have a huge potential to make an impact on one of our elementary schools. And there's no way really for us to kind of predict what that would look like and when it would look that way. I've asked our town planner, Mr. Di Giuseppe. Thank you very much, Peter. Is there a formula that is used when communities are considering projects? We think about the impacts on our police and our fire and our water and all of those other things, but there's really no way for us to estimate or to project how many students and families are going to move into these new residences. And if a family does move in, there's no way for us to predict if they're going to have 5 children under the age of 8, or if they're going to be moving in with middle schoolers or high schoolers. So ultimately, the best we can do as a system is to respond when students come and register, which is honestly not a great long-term plan, but it's really all we have.
So that was actually one of the questions I had kind of noted is, did we look at specifically the elementary districting when we looked at this plan? Because, to me, I just whispered to Sherry, you look at those projects, that's 2-3 years and I think a lot of those will be done in 2-3 years. Not all of them, but potentially 4 of them could be 2-year projects and they're done. I mean, so I don't know what the districts are and what they look like, but I know from the minute we heard about that Pine Street project, we were worried about LG because it is our smaller school. And then obviously, the apartments on Mansfield Ave. I don't think we were as worried at JCS because I know historically, many years ago, there were higher numbers at JCS. But we don't have space for...
No. And ultimately, no matter which way you shake it, we don't have space. LGN is extremely full in terms of classroom spaces, and I know some of you, we did building walks last year and I really enjoyed that, and I think it was eye-opening for a lot of you to kind of see the way our schools are used and the space restrictions that we're under at this point. I think that with the number of projects that we have going on and really no way to project, it makes it really difficult for us to say, well, what if we move the line this way? How would that work? Because it's really a moving target to really look at, because ultimately what we would need to do is we would need to make the LGN district smaller, and we would need to make the JCS district larger, which in a place like JCS, which really doesn't have a lot of room right now, it makes it difficult. We would also be looking at just increasing class sizes. But as one comes in and one comes out, to do it that way.
Well, I guess is it possible, not necessarily look at, but if we align the elementary school times, can that make it a little easier? Like, I don't wanna say like, you know, one side of the street is JCS, one is LG, but we could get to that point depending on how these, you know, projects.
Well, if you drive up North Washington Street
Yeah.
towards Mansfield, the neighborhoods on the right are LGN, the neighborhoods on the left are JCS. And those things are already happening in town, when you think about it. You know, one of the things that I always think about is Elm Street and Pine Street. Elm Street is JCS, Pine Street is LGN. So we do have a lot of that happening. I think some of the other things that we might want to consider, and I think this, again, this is a big, huge thing for us to consider. If we align those times, yes, I think we will have some flexibility in terms of like, hey, we have no space here, let's move these two streets over, or whatever that may be. But the other thing that we might want to think about considering is looking at the way we structure our schools in general. Like, is there a way for us to have all of our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders at the Yale School? Like, would we have space for that? Or, and then maybe you do K-2 somewhere else. Or perhaps, and again, this is all conjecture, I am not saying this is what we're going to do. Please don't anyone take this as definite. Maybe we turn LGN to an early childhood center, and that's where your preschool and kindergartners go. There are so many different, bless you, things for us to consider. I would probably be more likely to recommend something like that second option, because versus redrawing our lines. Because I think when we redraw the lines in a place where we have this much building, and Norton is a community that still has a good amount of open space, I think you're going to get into a situation where we're looking at that almost every year for a few years. Whereas if you said, okay, LGN becomes the LG Norris Early Childhood Center, you have preschool and kindergarten there, regardless of where you live in town. JCS becomes our 1, 2, and 3 school, or something along those lines. But it also gives, and I'm gonna use our 3rd grade team again, because Carrie was sitting here earlier. Now you have all of your 3rd grade teachers in the same building, under the same roof, at the same time of day. And the impact that that could have educationally for students, I think is huge. And I also think that if you're putting all of your students, and again, this is, just a conversation, not gonna happen. You can look really carefully at your class size. Because right now we do have inconsistencies in class size between JCS and LGN. And it's based on address. So that is something that I think that we might want to consider as we move forward and we have a little bit of a better handle on what these projects look like.
Was any of that discussed during these alignment meetings, or was it more strictly about timing?
It was all discussed.
And I think to add to that point as well, and again, obviously we're not going to go down that rabbit hole right now, but
just conjecture.
Yes, but if you did combine some type of, whatever, pre-K, K, and, whatever at LGN, and then you moved everyone else to JCS, I think that's an area where the town could look at possibly adding an extension onto JCS to make sure we can fit everyone. And now you're looking at, instead of building a whole new elementary school, you could go obviously through MSBA and so on and so forth to try to get a little bit more alignment, with what we're doing, which in the long run, obviously we need some studies and whatnot of exactly what that looks like. But is there a cost savings being everyone under one roof, call it 1st through 3rd?
And I think there's a lot of things that would have to be looked at for us to do that. I mean, Christine and I have had this conversation, like when we're just throwing ideas at the wall. Like, transportation would change, because you're gonna have a lot of students that are now more than 2 miles from their school.
Yep.
So we would have to consider those things. So it's, that would be a really big project for us. And something that I think my team is very happy to undertake, a few years down the road. But I do think, looking at some of the building, I think those are things that we really, as a school committee and as an administration, we need to make sure that we have our pulse on some of these things that are happening in town. And I've been very fortunate. Everyone at the town hall has been wonderful, answered all of my questions. Nick has been great. Paul has been great. Mike has been great. And we're just asking a lot of questions. And I think that's the best way for us to kind of figure out what makes the most sense.
So the last question I had on this, I know currently LG does not have morning childcare. Have we talked to our partners at Champions to see if that's something they can undertake? Because I know typically, you know, kids at the Hay can go to JCS and get a bus from there in the morning as an option, but I obviously it'll be a contract change, but has that,
So
have we
those
had
are,
that discussion
yeah,
with
so those are
Champions?
all things that we need to look at. So we put together a timeline of when we think these conversations kind of need to be finalized if we are going to make a change for September of 26. So I think that we should continue to have this conversation as a committee. But I would recommend that if we are going to make a change for September of 26, that we make that change and vote on it publicly no later than April of 2025. Which would allow us over a year for Christine to be working with Bloom to take a look at our new routes and timing and all of that. It would also give us the time to explore changes to our contract with Champions for before and after school care. Because just like the comment about mornings, we would have changes in what parents need for afternoons as well. So we would definitely need to look at that with them and in partnership with them to ensure, like, do we have 3 sites? Are students all going? Or is it maybe if the Yale starts first, there's going to be a site at the Yale and a site at one other building, and then students can get on the bus from the Yale and head to LG, something like that. So those are all things that would need to really be looked at and structured and done behind the scenes. And my feeling is that if we are going to make this change, that I would like to communicate that change to families before the end of this current school year. I'm saying if we're going to vote in April, our communication should go out to families in May. We would host community forums, do an FAQ document for our families, meet with them, because people are going to have concerns, regardless of what we decide on. Number one, it's never going to be something that everyone's going to be happy with. And number two, it's not going to meet the needs of everyone. And so therefore, that's why it's a really big undertaking. And as I said, we would recommend implementation for September of 26. So that's what I have for you guys tonight. I know it's a lot. I'm more than happy to answer any other questions that you have or take feedback. The other thing that I want to share is that as you look at things and you think about them, if you need additional information you want me to present on additional information here in public forum, or you want to ask questions offline, please do so. I'm more than happy to come out and present more information to you. If you want us to look at other things, we can do that as well. I just want you all to feel like you have as much information as you need in order to help us move this forward.
I think the only comment I have, and this I would just defer to you and Christine, is part of me is thinking with the bus sign up being July, I'd almost want to push that back to mid-June, because I think, and I'm guilty of this as a parent, the kids are out of school, you're in summer mode, you're in summer brain, you're forgetting about it, and I just think, even though we've been lucky the past few years, we get out fairly early in June, but that 2 weeks, I mean, you start, my kids are camp counselors, they're already working, things like that, and you're not thinking about the next school year. So it's just something to just, float out there.
Duly noted, absolutely. No, and I think that's why we have these conversations, and I think Christine, that makes her more comfortable too, seeing her facial expression when you said that, so.
No, because every year you scramble with summer work and for kids and everything else, and I've been that parent that Amazon's the book, overnights it the week before school.
Yeah, like August 28th, yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's just, you get that, as Kate mentioned, you get that summer break and you're not thinking, and even as a parent, you're not thinking about it. So it's just something to just kind of keep in the back.
I don't know if you shared this one, can you definitely share this
Yes.
slideshow with us? Because
Yes.
I think it lays it out a little bit better than.
Yeah, so everything that's in the slideshow is in the recommendation document, except for some of the student data that I shared with you at the beginning. I've literally finished putting this together for you guys tonight because I needed slides to talk from and set up this. So I will absolutely share this with you.
Thank Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I just want to say thank you to everybody on that committee, because I know that this was a long time and a lot of effort and a lot of meetings and
Thank you.
discussion and surveys and all the things. So just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
This was great.
Appreciate that.
Great. On to other business. Any topics that anyone has? The only one I have is I got an email from a community member just asking about some changing in fees. We almost added it to the agenda, but we knew it was going to be a pretty packed agenda. So, Jen, I think I shared that email with you, where basically the community member was asking about changing fees for honor societies and something that we could explore and look at. I obviously sent it over to Jen to kind of have her team shake it out. I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna touch upon this very quickly, and I think it warrants a larger conversation. But the way that our, number one, we have 9 honor societies in addition to the National Honor Society at Norton High School, which is almost unheard of. It really is amazing. I want to clarify, and so the way that they're set up is that they are set up as clubs. And so therefore they fall under that same charge that so it's $50 to belong to a club, there is no family cap. So the way that the structure of the societies work at Norton High School is that those are also clubs. So I think, and it's also important, I think, for everyone to know that students that are members of the National Honor Society do not pay a fee to the National Honor Society. So it's the other societies. So I know that, and I'll age myself a little bit, but when I was in high school, we had science club or math club or things like that. And these societies have taken the place of those clubs that originally existed. So I think there are structures and there are definitely things that we are paying out as a district. We pay stipends to the advisors of all of our societies. So therefore, the club fees go to subsidize those fees. But then there are also other costs, for example, to the national chapter or to the state organization, those types of things. So for example, the National English Honor Society, we pay $725 a year for our chapter to belong to the national chapter. So I think ultimately what we need to really do is A, figure out what the actual costs are of each of the honor societies and take a look at the structure. We've actually had budget meetings this whole week with our building principals and our department leaders, and it's been a really great week of very interesting conversations for some of these things and saying, okay, perhaps the way that we're structuring some of these things that we're offering to students needs to be relooked at. Personally, I don't necessarily believe that there should be a cost for all of these things, but I also know the budget that we have as a school community, and therefore, I think it just needs to be relooked at. And I know, Dan, high school parents have had their own experiences as well.
Yeah, just piggybacking, and we got this communication shortly after my youngest was inducted into 5 or 6. I lost the number. My response was simple. Anybody can join Best Buddies or DECA or this or that, and I'm not putting down any club that you can join. However, for honor societies, there are standards students have to make. So that was my thing. My response was, it's a different standard to get into this club, so they shouldn't be considered a club. It is selective. I have heard there are students that were not recommended to join these clubs. My daughter is a very good student. I guess she's in 5, and there was a couple she didn't go for that she'll go for next year. So, and I don't say that selfishly, because I watched the list of names across the stage that were there, a lot of kids, and some were in, I believe there was one child that had 7, and I believe the max you can get into is 8. Because you can't, to my knowledge, you can't get Spanish and French because of the academic load. So, and that was my big thing is, it's a different kind of club because it is selective and it's almost invitation only, so it can't be treated as one of the clubs where you show up and you're in. So I did urge, Nick and Dr. O'Neill that we need to have a discussion on this because it is a select group of students, rightfully so, because they are doing well academically, that we need to look at this further.
So I'm happy to bring some more information to the committee at our next meeting, which I believe is January 8th. And we can probably give you a little bit more. I think the only thing that we might want to consider is if you wanted to make changes, how we do that in terms of our current budget situation and really not having additional wiggle room in many places. So we would have to decide if this would be a change moving forward.
Yeah, and I think me and Dan kind of asked some questions in terms of like, where does this money go? How much are we charging? What is, kind of all that behind the scenes stuff, if you will. So I think if we can kind of obviously take a look at this a little deeper, and then we'll definitely get it on our agenda for January 8th. That way we can kind of sit down and go through it a little bit more with more information. Any other business? It's our last meeting of 2024, so that's a little wild. So hopefully everyone has a happy holiday season and a happy new year. I don't think I've ever done executive session, so I need to close this meeting.
I was just going to thank the town hall for allowing us to use this beautiful space tonight. We've made it through with, limited issues. So thank you to them for, allowing us to do this. And so what we're going to do is you'll exit general session or exit the open meeting to enter and not to return.
Got it. So I'm going to entertain a motion to close the December 11th meeting.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
And then I'm going to ask for a motion to open the executive session meeting and not return to open meeting. Is that how I do it?
You can technically do it all as one. So to adjourn, to go into executive session, you have to say why.
Just read the motion.
Okay, so the motion then would be to adjourn and to enter into the executive session for the purpose of contract negotiations with non-union personnel and not to return to open session.
Second.
And this has got to be a roll call vote, so Ms. Callahan.
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Sheedy?
Yes.
Ms. Michelle? Yes. And I'm a yes. Thank you all very much.
Have a nice night.
Thank you.